Hello everybody. We are going to be talking about stress management tonight because I know a lot of you guys have been in contact. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about stress management tonight because a lot of you guys have been contacting me because either the things that you used to use to deal with stress aren't working, or you're finding yourself to be more anxious or more depressed or more moody for whatever reason. And I think there's a lot of validity to that, especially with what's going on in today's world. But a lot of it is physiological, biochemical, and there are a lot of things that we can do to help with stress management. So I'm gonna give some people a little bit of time to come on, and then we are gonna dive in. Hello everybody that joined. I don't know you guys, so feel free to introduce yourselves. Whenever I'm doing one of these videos, you guys, feel free to tell me who you are, where you're from. Some of you guys I know, really consistently because you guys tune in. But if I don't know you, give me a shout. Okay, so pretty much, I'm gonna start up, you guys. Pretty much everybody that I've been talking to is more anxious, more depressed, or more moody. And I think that's because we've had a lot of changes in our schedules. And when we have changes in our schedule, that really shifts our biochemistry. Because really simply put, your body operates on rhythms. For instance, we have a sleep-wake cycle, which is known as our circadian rhythm, and that is balanced or driven by cortisol and melatonin, the rise and fall of both of those hormones. And we also tend to have meals throughout the day, generally on a certain schedule for most of us, and that creates a rhythm for our digestive system, which has its own natural rhythm in general with the migrating motor complex, which is responsible for a lot of our motility in the intestines. But we also have rhythm with when we secrete our digestive enzymes, and your body essentially prepares for food. And so rhythms with sleep-wake cycles, rhythms with meals. Us women, I treat mostly women and I talk mostly to women, especially on here. We have a cycle that happens every month. We are constantly having some flux in our hormones that happens over the whole month. So I think as humans in general, we're really programmed, designed, physiologically inclined, however you want to say it, to have rhythms. And so whenever we are shifted out of our rhythm, it makes a big difference for how we feel because it directly impacts our physiology. And one really interesting thing, I know a lot of people have told me that their eating habits have changed a lot with quarantine. And you guys hear the cool bird? A lot of people's eating habits have changed with quarantine, and that makes a lot of sense because we're indoors, we're a little bit bored, we are trying to self-soothe, so we're grabbing for more carbohydrates. But what you eat impacts the flourishing or the not flourishing of your own microbiome, and your microbiome is responsible for helping to fuel almost every single thing that our bodies do, which is really, really awesome. So, we go for the carbs, which is very soothing for our minds, but it doesn't promote microbial diversity in our... That is a really annoying bird. It doesn't create microbial diversity in our guts, and that's a giant problem because if we don't have microbial diversity, we don't have good gut health. And you guys know your gut impacts so many different things. So many different pieces of our health and physiology are all orientated in the gut. They all come from the gut. So we're reaching for carbs more to kind of self-soothe, and we're sitting more, we're having more of a sedentary lifestyle. Plus, for people that are out of work, or just are out of their regular schedule, that impacts a lot of the serotonin that we make naturally in our guts, which is a giant problem. Because if our gut cannot make the serotonin level that we're used to, we're going to naturally feel more flat, more anxious, possibly actually feeling depressed, feeling like nothing brings us joy. So, in general, I'm going to go into the hormonal connection of all of our hormones with how it impacts our physiology on a different Instagram live, but I just kind of wanted to impress upon you that we have natural rhythms every single day physiologically, and that makes a big impact on how our stress response operates, and just how we end up picking tools to deal with stress ourselves. So for those of you that are on the video, before I get too much into this, there's a bird outside my window. Can you hear it? If you can you just give me a thumbs up? Because it's super annoying to me, and I'm going to go shut the window, but shutting the window is very loud, so I want to avoid doing that. But I don't think it's going away. Anybody? Can you hear the bird? Okay, I'm going to shut the window. Be right back. Oh my goodness. Okay, yes, you can hear it. Okay, hopefully the bird is gone. Oh my goodness. And if I'm looking a little flushed, it's very hot here in San Diego. So yeah, everybody can hear the stupid bird. Of course, it picked the exact moment that I started this live to do that. However, okay, so for those of you that just tuned on, we are talking about my top 5 things that I will have people start with for stress management. And a lot of you guys have been telling me that schedules are off, diet is off, you're not feeling that great anymore. And I think a lot of that's due to the changes in our schedule, and that really impacts our biochemistry and how we feel. So the number one thing that I tell people, especially if you don't have a schedule or your schedule's been disrupted, is you need to make yourself a schedule. And you can do this so many different ways, whether it's something that you sit down and do every morning, or you do every night before you go to bed. But you should have some sort of consistent sleep and wake time, and then also consistency with meal timing, working out, and when you're doing your tasks. So say you're a morning person and you prefer to work out in the morning. So wake up and do your workout, and then have the other things that you need to do scheduled. If you're an evening person, create a morning routine that you can stick to, and a meal schedule that you can stick to, and then do your workout in the evening, and then start your wind down process at night. So everybody should have a morning routine. Everybody should have a before bedtime routine. And then, if routine is something that's really daunting for you, what I often tell people is start somewhere. I think we all envision, having this beautiful planner that we fill out and we stick to on the dot, and we're just not wired like that as humans. So don't worry about that. If you need to start somewhere, start with having a consistent bedtime and start having a consistent wake up time. And if you can't do both of those things, start with having a consistent wake up time. That will make a giant difference for you. So number one is create a schedule for yourself. And this is because our bodies are designed to have rhythms. So if you don't currently have one in your life, you need to create one for yourself. And even if you're someone that, is self-employed like myself, or you have a job 9 to 5, you can still create a rhythm for yourself and create a little bit of a schedule. And for those of you people that aren't planners, you're probably dying a little bit inside, and I totally feel you. I'm a planner, so this comes a little bit more easily to me. But for people that are more spontaneous, you essentially create general guidelines. But you might have a set time where you go to bed and you wake up, but you have a general guideline. Like say I'll eat lunch around noon, or I will work out sometime in the afternoon. So that gives you some ability to be spontaneous and not be set to a rigid schedule. Because I know some people that is, really, really hard to do, unfortunately. But it's just because how your brain is wired, you like to be more spontaneous, which is totally fine. So, but even if you're a spontaneous person or you're a planner, you can still benefit from this. And I think, regardless of how we're wired personality-wise, our bodies still crave a rhythm. So this creating a rhythm for yourself, creating a schedule, essentially helps you to be less anxious because your body can plan for what's coming and you can mentally plan for what's coming. When we have a bunch of tasks or a bunch of to-dos or whatever it is in our head, then that tends to make us more anxious and less productive. So if we can write down, create a schedule, it's going to make a big difference. I always tell people to set goals, whether it's small things like I'm going to walk, for 30 minutes a day, 3 times this week, or large goals like I'm going to make $100,000 this year, or whatever it is. Set goals, and I usually will have people set weekly goals, daily goals, monthly goals, yearly goals, and then sometimes you can even do quarterly goals. This is super relevant to me because I'm a business owner. So if that's not you, you might not need to do some of those longer term goals, but if you don't have a business, you can put in personal goals in there. And I often will have people, write down their health goals and put it up somewhere that they can see it. Like I want to lose 10 pounds by September or something like that. So that wherever they go every day, they see it and they're reminded, so that helps them remember. And so let's see, daily goals. I think that daily goals are really helpful for people that tend towards anxiety, depression, because it helps narrow down what you need to do for the day. So you're not, trying to go 1 mile a minute and figure out what you need to do. It's just, I have these 3 tasks for today and I'm going to do them. Depending on if you're a planner or a spontaneous person, you can do it however you'd like to. But if you are tending towards more anxiety, you don't have a schedule, you have to make yourself a schedule. If that feels really daunting, then you make a sleep time, a bedtime, and a wake time. And if you can't do that, then you start with a wake time and you do it religiously every single morning. You wake up at the same time every morning. That's really, really important for our nervous system and our just normal circadian rhythms, our sleep-wake cycles. It also can help make us feel less anxious whenever we have a schedule and we know what we need to do every day. So the other thing I tell people is write down your goals or write down your schedule. Don't just type it, so that you have that brain involvement. If you write something down, you're more likely to do it or accomplish it. So it's better to commit it to memory. And put it somewhere you can see it every day. So whether you're using a planner or you have sticky notes in your bathroom, that can be really helpful. The other thing that I really like about making a schedule is that it kind of helps get everything out, because most people that I work with that are depressed, moody, anxious, they tend to ruminate on a lot of thoughts, and the thoughts tend to never get out of the brain. It just is like this consistent, and it feels like this, especially if you are anxious. It's like, oh my gosh, I have all of this like internal mental energy that's just super, super annoying and often takes away from focus on tasks and ability to complete projects, those types of things. So one thing that you can do is do what's called a brain dump exercise. And this is where you sit down for 15 minutes, at least 15 minutes, totally no distractions. Put your phone in the other room, have a pen and paper, or if you're a fast typer like me, I like to do an online journaling app called penzu.com. Because it keeps all my entries and I can just brain dump a bunch of stuff. So whenever I'm feeling anxious, or, you know, my coping mechanisms aren't working, or I'm just feeling weird, or I'm feeling really stressed, I'll sit down, I'll buckle down, I'll clue in to the computer, and I'll just type everything out. That works really well for me. You can also write it out. It's a lot slower, and that's why I don't like it. But that can be really just healing too, to actually physically write down everything that's bothering you. So when you're doing a brain dump, you can do one of two things. You can create a list of, you know, everything that you need to get done for the day, so you can decrease your anxiety, or the week or the month, you know, anything that's on your mind list wise, get it out and organize it to, you know, make it useful as an exercise. The other thing that you can do is like a stream of consciousness of, if you guys ever did this, you know, back in high school, a stream of consciousness is essentially you just writing one big long sentence and just getting everything out in sentence form, not a list form. And sometimes this can be in the form of a story or things that you're thinking, feeling. But the idea is that you got to get this out, people, especially people that are highly stressed, that are in high demand, whether you're a mom, you're a providing dad, you're, you know, whatever it is, people that have a lot of responsibility on themselves for whatever reason, whether they're a parent, they're working, they're running their own business, they're traveling, who knows. But you got to get it out. And, you know, those types of people have a lot of stuff going on in their brain, and that's where a lot of anxiety can essentially get stuck. I know for a lot of adults, this type of process can be a little weird, because what happens is that especially if you're doing like a stream of consciousness, it feels funny to write down stuff like, a perfect example was I was going to Staples one time. Hi. This is an example for something that made me feel really stupid, that I would probably feel really dumb writing out. So if you were doing this exercise, this is a good example. So one day I went to Staples on a just very generic errand, and I was pulling my car out of its parking spot, and I looked over my shoulder and I saw a car very, very far away, nowhere near close to me, going very slow in the parking lot. And so I knew that I had plenty of time to pull out, and I also didn't know where that car was going. So the car could have turned by the time I pulled out, or waited for my parking spot, something like that. And I was going very, very slow. And the person, what they ended up doing was speed up, unbeknownst to me, and honk as loud as they could as I was pulling out. And this is a day that I was already feeling very stressed, for whatever reason I can't remember. And I just remember stopping the car and feeling just so stressed and angry and emotional in that moment. And, you know, that's a perfect example of, if I took that home and wrote that in my journal in this brain dump exercise to help me deal with that stressful event, I probably would have felt really silly. But it's actually really cathartic. It's really healing to get stuff out. So I try to, you know, however you do it, if you're brain dumping it, doing a list, a stream of consciousness, something, you gotta get stuff out. And I also call this a brain dump exercise because I find that a lot of adults are resistant to this idea of journaling, even though journaling is fantastic because it connects what you're thinking with your inner world. So I always try to encourage journaling whenever possible. And then whenever you're done creating your list, like say you're brain dumping your list for the week, go through it and stay positive. So don't do the whole, I could never accomplish that, or, you know, I could never lose that 5 pounds, or I could never work out 3 days a week, something like that. No shaming yourself, just do it. You know, it's essentially giving your inner woman or your inner man a voice to say something. So honor that. Don't poo-poo any of it. And then just put it away. Do your brain dump, put it away, especially if it's a stream of consciousness, just put it away. If it's a list, then, keep it handy because you might refer back to it. So like, say you made a list of everything that you needed to do that day, then use it. I love this exercise, especially if it's been a hard day and you're really anxious, or if you're planning for your week, or if you're ending the week. So number one, we just went through number one thing to do to help with stress management is you have to make a schedule for yourself every day to follow, whether it's an hour by hour thing, or it's I'm going to eat consistent meals, or minimum that I have people do is have a consistent wake time, because that makes a big difference in how we feel throughout the day and can make us feel less anxious because our nervous system knows to expect that wake time. The next thing, we're going to go into number 2. So number 2 is breathing. Breathing is a very underutilized treatment for any sort of nervous system issue. I'm talking about tonight stress management, and people that I'm helping to stress manage tend to be anxious. So breathing can be really helpful for people that tend towards anxiety, because it's essentially when we don't breathe deeply, our bodies are less oxygenated, and that actually makes us more acidic. And your body's not supposed to be in an acidic state. We're supposed to be more alkaline or neutral. And so when we're more acidic, that tends to breed more inflammation, and we tend to be more anxious. So learning how to breathe can be a huge game changer. And learning how to breathe, there's multiple different steps to it. I'll start you guys with an exercise that I have people do, but really we should be learning how to breathe deep into our belly. In society, we are taught, don't pooch out your stomach ever, always have a flat stomach, that's always the goal. But if we are properly breathing, our stomach is actually going to move, and it will, change the width of your abdomen. So you have to expect that, because when you breathe out, your diaphragm goes down, and that pushes out your stomach. So take that as it is. We need to get more used to that deep breathing and not holding our stomach in so much, because that creates a lot of shallow breathing. And when we're shallowly breathing, we're not pulling air deep into the lowest parts of our lungs, so we're not fully oxygenating, which is a problem. And a lot of people hold their breath. You probably do it when you're reading labels, when you're at a stoplight, when you're talking with certain people, when you're in a stressful environment. So sometimes we just need to learn to actually keep breathing in the midst of whatever task that we're doing. And I often recommend people to a couple of resources for this, because it can often feel a little weird to start doing this. But let's talk about the resources next. The actual exercise that I have people do is I call it 4-6 count breathing. It's essentially that you take 4 counts in on an inhale and 6 counts out on an exhale. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you would be inhaling that whole time, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that would be your exhale. So the idea is that when we are doing a longer exhale, we are stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. And with the parasympathetic nervous system, that is your rest, digest, heal nervous system. And people that tend to be more anxious and dealing with a lot of stress in their lives tend to be in a chronically sympathetic state. Sympathetic state is opposite than a parasympathetic state. And parasympathetic is where you are relaxed. Rest, digest, heal, relax. And the thing with anxiety is that you can get stuck in the mode. So you can get stuck in being in a sympathetic mode, in that go, fight or flight mode. And it can be really hard to switch your body into parasympathetic mode. So if you guys have ever been on vacation, you guys can probably relate that, wherever you got to where you were going and you started to relax, you initially felt a little bit weird. And then Excuse me. And then by the time, day 3 happened, then you really felt like you could relax, enjoy, you were happier, everything was so much better. But that's because it took that amount of time for you to click out of your sympathetic state into your parasympathetic state. It takes a significant amount of time. So the 4-6 count breathing, you can do this anywhere. You can do this at a stoplight. You can do this when you're on the toilet in the bathroom. You can do this when you're showering. You can do this, before you go to bed at night. The idea is to create a little bit more of a breathing practice, so that we're fully oxygenating and, using the benefits of the breathing. The resources that I was going to mention is doasone.com is really fascinating. So it's DOASONE.com, and there is a breathing room on doasone.com, and you can look all over the world to see who is also logged onto the website, which is really cool. And there is a visual, kind of like a mandala, that will change colors and will give you audio cues if you want to, but it will give you visual cues as well to help you really get better at breathing. But there's also a lot of apps, so like I Breathe, Breathe with an E, Calm app, those can all be really, really helpful. So if you feel like you need a little bit of guidance getting you into just being a more regular breather, then definitely look one of those up. Okay, so number 1 was create a schedule for yourself. Minimum, make a consistent wake up time. Really, really helps people with anxiety and just moody everything. Even if you're having hormonal ups and downs, it's going to help. And also brain dumping exercises. So that was number 1. Number 2 is breathing. Learn how to breathe properly and start with the 4-6 count breathing. That can be super, super helpful because that helps us get out of our sympathetic state into our parasympathetic state. Number 3, this is one of my favorites. You guys are gonna laugh, but turn off the news. You have to turn off the news, you guys. Half the news that is reported is, or I would say over half of the news that is reported is stuff that you really don't need to know about. It's super depressing, it's super gory, and it's very violent often. So you have to think about what you're putting into your world every day. Do you want to put stuff like that into your world every day? And for people that want to be on top of current events, I just tell them get your news from a different source, or have one day or one morning for like maybe an hour or 2 while you catch up on the week so that you stay informed. But watching the news every day, really, really bad idea. I've been telling this to patients for years, and probably the reason why I'm so gung-ho about this is because this has helped me hugely, especially if you are an empathic person where you pick up on the energy of other people, or you pick up on the energy in just the world or nature, whatever environment you're in. You need to do this. I often will write this on a prescription pad and actually give it to patients because they need someone to just tell them to turn off the TV. And the big issue that I have with news is that a lot of it's really inaccurate. So it's actually spreading a lot of crap around. So I always encourage people, if you're interested in a certain topic, research it a lot so that you get really informed, because that's the point of news, right? Is to be informed, not to just perseverate on all these negative things. So do your research, don't take things at face value, and try to limit your news down to maybe 1 or 2 hours a week on a weekend in an environment where you're, not as stressed. Like say you do this every Saturday morning on your laptop with some green tea, and that's your time to watch the news or read the news online. So I want to share with you a patient example. So I had a patient who super empathic. She would pick up on everything that was going on, and was just such a light. She was really awesome. But I think several years ago now, we ended up having this visit where she was telling me that she was so stressed, and it had increased exponentially greater than what her normal stress levels were. And after some questioning, I realized that she was watching the news every single night before she went to bed, and that was actually interfering with her sleep, both her sleep initiation and her sleep maintenance and her wake time. And so I actually told her, you need to watch the news 1 hour a day in the morning while you're doing your spin that you really enjoy for your exercise, so that you're getting out the negativity and those negative emotions while you were exercising, which is helping regulate your cortisol, which is helping you to de-stress. So combining those two things essentially canceled them out. And then she was also exercising too. So she came back several weeks later, and she did report that she felt insanely better. And this was hard for her because she was one of those people that really loved the news, and would stay up till 10, 11 watching different news shows. But I really encouraged her to do this, and she did it, and it was a game changer for her. So definitely think about it for yourself. So number 2, turn off the news. Number 3, nice segue, exercise. So I think that exercise is one of the most potent anxiolytic, so anti-anxious, stress-reducing thing we have to utilize almost on the planet. Exercise is so well studied, has so many different articles for mood disorders that it helps anxiety, it helps depression, hugely, you guys. And this is because of the hormones that are created when you exercise. And that I'm going to go into on another Instagram live. But when someone comes into me and they are struggling with panic attacks, one of the things that I tell them is just stop everything that you're doing whenever you get a panic attack and do push-ups. Because what this is going to do is it's going to, bring into play that anti-stress component of exercise, but it's also going to distract you from whatever you were doing. So it changes the focus of the brain and also decreases the panic. So wherever you are, generally there's the ground, so you can do push-ups, or there's somewhere, if you can't do push-ups on the ground, you can do incline push-ups, which I actually posted it on my story a little bit earlier this week. So hope you guys saw that. But just doing some exercise pretty immediately if you're getting panic attacks to help stop that. Things that you can do long-term for anxiety exercise-wise, walking is, in my opinion, a hugely important type of medicine. Walking helps decrease your cortisol, and it helps decrease, because a lot of the people that I work with have issues with cortisol, and that's part of the reason why they're anxious. And that makes sense, because if you're on sympathetic overdrive, you're creating a lot of cortisol, and cortisol makes you anxious because cortisol also changes your blood sugar, and if your blood sugar is all over the place, that also makes you anxious. So walking will lower cortisol and will also be a form of exercise that promotes, all of those endorphins that help kind of lower everything down, calm you down. So if you are an anxious or a depressed person and you're not walking consistently 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, at least several times a week, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. I really encourage you to get out there and create a walking practice. And you can time your walks however you want to, whether it's first thing in the morning, or it's in the evening, or it's in the afternoon. If you have a flexible schedule, it's good to time your walk after the most stressful part of the day, so that you get that anti-anxious cortisol lowering effect after the stressful part of the day. Fun tip. I did this early on in my medical practice, kind of accidentally. I would take a walk at lunch every single day to get out of the office, because I worked at an office that was by the beach, and I thought, why not? I've never been this close to the beach this consistently ever in my life, besides growing up, which is a different topic. But I think it was the thing that saved my adrenal glands and helped me deal with stress management looking back, because the amount of tasks that I had to do when I was a brand new doctor, it was literally astounding. I was essentially doing the work of, 4 or 5 different people. And that was one thing that really helped me cope. So definitely get some walking into your life. And if you guys need to start small, then start small, but don't do nothing, because that's not going to help you. The other thing is that a lot of people don't want to walk because they don't think it's as analogous to running, or it's not going to get them to their goals, or what have you. They have a certain type of exercise that they like, and they like to stick with it. So for those types of people, I will tell them, well, if you're going to go on a run for your exercise, it's going to be more stress inducing, because it's just naturally more stressful in the body running. And it's going to burn the same calories as walking. So whether you run 5 miles or walk 5 miles, you're going to burn the same amount of calories. Yes, running does have an increased EPOC, or post-exercise oxygen consumption. But the walking is going to be restorative versus the running is going to be stressful. So for a lot of people that are long-term runners, and they're stressed, I often will switch their running for their walking, or have them do part of their run and end with a significant walk. That way they still get a little bit of running, but they also get that restorative effect of walking. So that's really common. But walking is going to leave you less anxious, more restored than, say, running is. So, number 3 is exercise for a reason, because exercise in almost any form will decrease anxiety and anxious feelings. But there are better exercises to do than others, like walking is fantastic. Lifting weights can be fantastic, but that can also be stressful in the body. So sometimes that does the opposite. So if you have a current exercise practice, I would just add in a walking practice as well. You don't necessarily need to just make your exercise the walking, though for some people I do that, and that makes a big difference. Okay, so number 1, we're doing the top 5 tricks for stress management. These are easy things that you can do at home. So number 1 is making a schedule for yourself every single day to follow, because our bodies are physiologically designed to have a rhythm. So create a rhythm for yourself if you don't have one already, because a lot of people, hello everybody, I'll wave at a couple people, because a lot of people right now currently don't have a lot of stuff going on, or work has changed, or school has changed, just the rhythm of life has changed. So you have to make a new rhythm for yourself. This creates less anxiety. Also, doing a brain dump exercise every day or around stressful events can help get the anxious thoughts out of you onto paper, and then you can deal with them. So that makes a big difference. Gotta get some water. Number 2 is breathing, because breathing is a huge, powerful tool for just combating anxious thoughts. It also oxygenizes our body, because too many people hold their breath and are chronically stressed, so they need to learn how to breathe again. Turning off the news is a big deal. That is number 3. I'm not going to get into that. I already explained that. Exercise is number 4. Super fantastic. Exercise is one of the best anti-anxiety things that we have. It's way better than medication too, you guys. So if you're not consistently exercising and you're anxious, you need to get doing that. And you can start with just starting with a walking practice. Really, really easy. Include some walking into your day, and you can batch the walking too. You don't have to go for a whole hour at a time. You can do 10 minutes at a time. That definitely still works. Number 5. Okay, so this is one of my personal favorites, because when we talk about number 6, this will make a little bit more sense. But you have to, when you're a person that is anxious or deals with panic or deals with anxious thoughts, whatever grade it's at, you have to retrain your brain, and you have to essentially brain hack yourself, and you have to learn how to create safe places and process the feelings of anxiety. So one thing that I recommend to people is to bring yourself through a set of questions. So step 1 is question yourself, and then step 2 is do something about it. So the questions that I had people go through, I'll read them off for you guys. Is number 1 is, what am I feeling? which is an emotion. So I am feeling tired, or I am feeling excited, or I am feeling, I struggle with this one, as you guys can see, because I chose tired and excited as my only ones. Or I'm feeling hurt, or I'm feeling disappointed, something like that. So what are you feeling? So give it a name. And then where am I feeling it? So often anxiety, depression will find itself as settling somewhere in your body. So sometimes people feel a little nauseous, or they feel a little short of breath, or they have a headache, or their left toe hurts, or they feel like this deep ache. So name it. Where am I feeling it? So name the physical location. And then I always have a why question, because I feel like it's really helpful. Why am I feeling this way? And this is where you will name the causative situation. So if you are feeling stressed and you're working through these questions, when you say, why am I feeling this way? A good example would be because my friend was mean to me, or because I almost, I don't even know. Trying to think of a good example. A morbid one, my car almost got, or my dog almost got run over by a car, something like that. So why am I feeling this way is the causative situation. And then what am I afraid of? And for those of you that are tuning in, I have these all written down, and I will post it on my blog, on my website, so you have it. The next one is, what am I afraid of? Because usually when there's anxiety and anxious thoughts, there's also fears that are associated with the anxiety. So I always have people name the fear that's actually driving the anxiety. And this is really key, because sometimes we're afraid of something that we can't control. So in all technicality, it's pointless to be anxious about it. So this is really powerful, because there are some people that their anxiety is always about things that they can't control. And there are people that have very tangible sources of anxiety, of things that they essentially can. And it's really important to figure out what category that you are in, because if you can't do anything about it, we have to really retrain your brain and give you tools to deal with the thoughts, because you can't necessarily fix the situation. So that's a big thing. The next one I ask people to say is, why do I feel unsafe? Because if you have a history of anxiety, panic, and then sometimes depression, there's some sort of feeling of unsafety that's maybe playing into the fear, or playing into the feelings in some way. So what am I feeling? Where am I feeling it? Why am I feeling this way? What am I afraid of? And why do I feel unsafe? And these questions are really powerful, because if you know what you're feeling, you can usually deal with it. But if you can recognize it as a feeling, you can sit with it and give it a few minutes, and then I often have people decide to come back to it later. So say this is a thought process or an anxious thought process that's really starting to take over your day. You can use these questions, identify it, sit with it for a couple of minutes, just kind of let it settle. And then you can make a conscious decision. I will think about this later. And then tell yourself, I'm going to think about this at this time. I'm going to think about this at dinner time, or I'm going to think about this tomorrow at 9 a.m. And then one or two things are going to happen. You're going to forget, because you're going to move on to something else that's worth your time more than your anxious thoughts. Or you're going to actually come back to whatever you needed to address, and you're going to address it. So I like this idea because it's not repressive, but it is redirecting. And I think that's really important for whenever we're sorting through feelings, thoughts, things that are scaring us. It's really important not to just repress everything. And I know that there are some people out there that are very pro repressing stuff, but I usually put everything in the let's come back to this later box, because it's very helpful in the moment to help you move on to what you guys actually need to get doing. And then I want to come back to the journaling idea. We talked about this a lot in number 1, but if you want to examine your anxiety a little bit more, you can ask yourself like really deep questions like, where do I feel safe? And you can also ask yourself things like, what do I do every day that makes me feel safe? Because then you can understand what is going to be more triggering for you. Because if ever our safety is threatened, we're going to be on high alert. We're going to be more anxious. So if you can determine part of, it's like the safety profile. If you determine your own safety profile, you're going to have better success in retraining your brain, because sometimes the brain goes on overdrive when it doesn't need to. And a perfect example is when people get their blood drawn. I deal with a lot of patients who hate getting their blood drawn. They tend to faint, they get sweaty, they get really, really anxious. But in reality, what's happening? A very highly trained professional who is doing all of the personal protective equipment and all of the medical precautions is going to put a very small needle into their vein for a very short period of time for a very specific purpose, which technically should not be anxiety producing. But for a lot of people it is, because their brain has labeled needles as being scary, because needles can cause pain. So sometimes anxious thoughts come up because of pain. And we're going to talk about that in the next point. But in reality, the blood draw is helpful for that person because we're getting ideas about their body or a medical condition that they have, or it's really necessary because we need to get blood drawn from them because they're really, really sick, something like that. So with these types of people, I do these types of exercises so that we can retrain the brain that, hey, getting your blood drawn isn't really that bad. It's doable, and it's not something we're going to do every day, but we can bring their anxiety reaction from like maybe up here all the way to down here to get them from, incontrollable anxiety around the situation to manageable. I can deal with this for 5 minutes and I'm not going to be happy about it, but I'm not going to freak out, yell, twitch, get sweaty, feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. So these things can help you determine kind of your threshold, your safety threshold, which is important. And then last thing I want to talk to you guys about, and we're going to wrap up here soon. Hello to everybody that's on here. Anxiety is often a symptom that there's something deeper going on. So anxiety is often a symptom that there's something deeper going on. And I bring this up as our final point because I work with a lot of women who sometimes they're chronically anxious, they have true anxiety, and some women come in and out of it. So for the people that have true ongoing, lifelong anxiety, there's usually a reason medically why that's happening. But sometimes it's situational. And what I mean by that is that there's some reason in the past why they tend to get more anxious than the typical person. So big long list for this, you guys. Trauma is a huge one, and I often, when people are anxious and we're doing a lot of good work and we're helping them with their anxiety and it's just not moving in the direction that I want to go, I'm often asking them, have you had any trauma in your life in the past when you were young? And this is a very, very delicate topic, so I don't want to make light of this. But if you have, most people that have trauma know that they have had trauma, and most people that I have interacted with that have trauma are not fully resolved on that trauma. So we talk about that, and we usually get them some help. We send them to a mental health specialist, psychiatrist, counselor, whatever they need to get to the bottom of trauma. But a lot of chronic anxiety people have trauma that's unresolved, and your body holds on to trauma. So if you haven't talked it out and resolved it, it's going to store. And so people can have, pains, stomach issues, headaches, the like. So trauma, I always ask people about, But anxiety is a symptom that something deeper is going on. So this can be self-love issues, this can be having dopamine problems, neurotransmitter problems, hormonal swings, some sort of food issue, like you have food anxiety, or you have some sort of disordered eating pattern, or you have a true eating disorder. I see this really commonly. Blood sugar imbalances, like I was saying before, unresolved past childhood wounds, a mold contamination. I just did a live on mold a couple weeks ago, learning about that myself. Candida overgrowth, some sort of gut imbalance, even taking too much vitamin B can make you more anxious for those people that are genetically susceptible. People with autoimmune disease because they have more inflammation, but people also just might need counseling in general to help with this deeper problem. But if it's an organic thing, like a disease state, then we just do a lot of detective work to figure it out. So I do an in-depth history and different types of lab testing depending on what's indicated to figure out why you are anxious. And then we just start trying different things. And most of my treatments for anxiety are going to be, non-toxic, very low force, but very effective types of natural interventions. So let's go through the top 5, but it's really top 6 tricks for stress management. So this, I've been talking a lot about anxiety tonight, but this applies for everybody that needs to manage their stress better. So number 1 is make a schedule for yourself. And within that schedule, you need to create goals, and you need to have some sort of brain dump journaling exercise. Number 2 is breathing. I have people start with a 4 to 6 count breathing exercise. There are apps and websites that you can use that can help you with breathing because it's very foreign to some people. Number 3 is turn off the news, and this is a big one, especially now, but I've been telling my patients this for years. So limit your news time to an hour, maybe 2 a week during a period of time where you are doing something relaxing, like it's a weekend and you're out to brunch, or you're walking the beach, or you're laying on the beach, something like that. Number 4 is exercise. Exercise is the most potent anti-anxiety, mood balancing, antidepressive thing that we have out there. So if you're not doing some sort of walking, because walking is restorative type of exercise that's going to lower cortisol and help with anxious thoughts, or a different type of exercise, then you're essentially doing yourself a disservice. So get out there, create time, put it in your schedule. Number 5 is retrain your brain. We often have to retrain your brain to just know that not every situation is stressful. The example that I used is doing a blood draw. But you might have a past bad experience in your workplace and you need to do some brain retraining around that, different things like that. And I'm a big pro for journaling. I'm a pro journaler person, and I have people go through a list of questions to help determine where their anxiety feelings could be coming from. And people that tend towards depression can use this, people that are moody, people that are all over the world with their mood, they can do these questions. And when I post this video, I'm going to post the questions on my website, so you guys will have them. And then the last thing is, sometimes anxiety is just really a symptom that there's something deeper going on. So I often recommend a lot of my ladies that I work with go to counseling, go to therapy. Therapy is the best, and therapy has this horrible stigma, but it really shouldn't. You go take your car into the car doctor if it needs a tune-up. Same thing for your brain. Go to someone that treats the brain. Go to therapy. So that is all I have tonight. We talked about the top 6 tips that I have for stress management. So thank you all for joining. There are several of you that stayed the whole time, which is fantastic. I have 6 minutes, so if you guys have any questions, drop them in ASAP. I'm going to give about a minute to have you guys drop in any questions that I want to address. But otherwise, we're going to call it a night. I do these Instagram lives every Monday night at 5 p.m. So For those of you that haven't filled out my content survey, if there's things that you want me to talk about, then send me a note and I will send you the survey so you can let your voice be heard. It helps me figure out what I'm talking about every week because there's so many things that I could talk about, and it helps narrow it down for me. So it's actually really helpful for me too, and it gives me some eyes on what you guys are interested in as well. Because I know I talk about so many different topics. It's not always GI, it's not always hormones, it's not always mood. So yeah. Okay, you guys, last calls. Thank you all for tuning in. You guys are fantastic. And I'll see you next week. Bye.